Welcome back, Anagenesis. Daniel here, continuing now with our meditations on the book of Proverbs. I want to think with you a little bit today about the intersection between the human heart and wisdom. And the reason I want to look at that with you is that I believe when we understand the nature of this interaction between the heart and wisdom, we come to understand what the book of Proverbs is and how it's designed to function in our lives. What we'll see, I believe, is that the book of Proverbs is actually a training protocol for cultivating the optimal awareness in the presence of God here in this world. It's not only a manual for training, but it's a training ground for developing the proper sort of attention. Now, in order to see that, we have to look at this interaction between heart and wisdom. You'll remember wisdom, we said, is all those skills that produce fruitful order in this world. And it goes all the way back to how God made this world, but then we discover them and we live out of them ourselves. Now, the heart then is something that we haven't talked about yet, but we need to now. What is the heart? In the West, the tendency when we hear the word heart is to associate it only with emotion. And that's there too. It's not wrong to think of emotion as something that happens in the heart. Biblically speaking, there is emotion there, but the heart does a lot more. It's a much broader concept and a broader set of capacities for the human person than simply emotion. Within the heart, for instance, we speak and we think, we decide. We evaluate and judge things. Within the heart, we feel the whole range of feelings, anger and sadness and anxiety and hope and bitterness and calm and on and on. Within the heart, we remember or we forget. Within the heart, we plan and we trust or distrust. We're loyal or disloyal. All of this range of functions, of activities of the person are within the heart. And so it's very broad. It's broader than what we tend to think about when in the West we take kind of our mental experiences and we break it up into mind or reason, and we distinguish that from emotion or feeling, and maybe we'll distinguish also a third one of choice or will. Now, those distinctions are appropriate. It's just that all three of those are aspects or dimensions of the heart, which is this broader, bigger, more basic thing for the human person and human life. In simplest possible terms, I think a good way to think about the heart biblically is to say that it is your present awareness. It is everything that you are aware of right now. And because of that, the way that we make use of it is largely through what we would call attention. And so when you read heart, try sometimes substituting out awareness, present awareness, or even attention. And you'll get to the meaning of what this is gesturing towards. But like I said, it's very broad and it's more complex than we could put words to. Just for instance, take a snapshot of everyday life. Say I'm sitting down at a restaurant having a conversation with a friend, and we're both looking at menus as we have this conversation, getting ready to order something, okay? Everyday activity happening all the time, to the last few weeks. And yet in that, if you were to kind of analyze and look at all this going through our awareness, you'd be astounded, because right there at that, all in one moment, I could be scanning the menu, kind of looking for where's the salmon Caesar, and be aware at that same time also of an itch in my left foot, of hunger in my stomach, be applying some mental concentration to hold the conversation topic in mind, have a kind of background anxiety that maybe I'm forgetting something, and at the same time, a certain curiosity that I want to get to in the conversation about what he or she is thinking about a particular topic. And all of this time, I'm also speaking to answer a question that I was just asked. Now, that kind of complexity of activity within our awareness is the norm. That's not uncommon. That's the sort of thing that we live through all the time. And it's one of the reasons why if we actually sat down and tried to write out everything going through our mind, it inevitably must leave out things, because the mind is expansive in that sort of way, or the heart, I should say, is expansive in that way. Now, this consciousness, this present awareness, which is your heart, for good and for bad, is what makes up the substance of your life, the substance of my life. This is why we're told, Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23, watch over your heart, your awareness with all diligence, because from it life flows. Whatever your life is going to be is going to come from your heart, your present awareness, your attention. Now, what is it what does heart, your present awareness, then have to do with wisdom? You'll remember, wisdom is this kind of deep set of patterns of order within creation that is the skillful way in which God ordered the world. It's also the deep set of patterns that make for order and fruitfulness in human life. And in contrast to grasping that deep structure, which is what wisdom is to grasp that deep order, in the contrary to that is what's called folly, or we could just say thoughtlessness. And remember, thoughtlessness, it's a kind of shallowness. It's a failure to look deep enough to get to what's underlying and really causing things. And because of that, it results in human beings that are pursuing short-sighted goals and wayward, counterproductive means for reaching goals in life. That's what shallowness, thoughtlessness does. Now, since wisdom in terms of the human life is a kind of seeing, we have to think a little bit about what goes into seeing well. Any kind of sight, of perception, requires finding the appropriate amount of zoom or focus on the object at hand. And what will be appropriate depends on the object. It's relative to what it is that you're trying to see. And so, I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a book. Here's this book. Say it's lying out on the lawn, and you could think of a range of zoom, of in or out focus, degrees of resolution that allow you to see different things. And you could start with such a broad angle. This is like a Google Earth satellite view, that you look down, and there, if you see anything, it's a dot. It's not a book even, or perhaps it's nothing. It's so broad angled you don't catch the object you're aiming at all. So that's one extreme. But then on this other, there's another continuum. Say that you went out there and you applied a microscope to it, and you zoom in so close, all you can see at that point are kind of intermeshed paper pulp. You miss words, sentences, paragraphs. You don't see a book, you just see fibers. Now, if you kind of in between these two, if you find the appropriate angle of vision, amount of zoom to get it in focus, what you begin to see Is it here we have letters, and not just letters, but words, and not just words, but they form sentences and paragraphs? Okay. Now, at that point, we can see the book. Now, we can take that example of finding the right zoom for vision, and we'll see it also applies to the workings of the heart, of our awareness, that enables us, if it finds the sweet spot, the appropriate amount of focus, that enables us to receive the meaning coming up out of this world in creation. And so, for instance, go back to the same example. Let's just pursue it a little further. Now that we have the right zoom, now we see that on this page, this is a book. But now we have to find the right amount of zoom at the level of heart or awareness in order for the meaning within those words and sentences and paragraphs and chapters to emerge, right? And so, and perhaps a good way of getting at what this is like is just to point out you've had the experience of missing meaning while reading, right? We all have. My eyes are moving over the page. Maybe even I'm sub-vocalizing so that the words that correspond to those on the page are going through some part of my mind, but I'm not getting the meaning because my heart, my attention, my awareness is really somewhere else. I'm thinking something else in the back of my mind has kind of taken over, and I'm not attentive enough for the meaning to emerge out of those sentences and paragraphs. And so I get to the end of a paragraph or the end of a page, and I realize I have no clue what I just read. None of it is connected. None of the meaning has arrived to me. And so what do? Well, then we have to go back and we concentrate. We apply enough focus, enough of our attention awareness for the meaning to come out as we go over them again. In biblical terms, what was happening when I missed the meaning? I vocalized the words that were on the page, but the meaning didn't come in. In biblical terms, what was happening at that point was that I lacked heart. There was a deficit of awareness that made it so that I missed the meaning in what I was reading. Now, that's important because if we're going to live a life of wisdom, we have to get to the right level of engagement, of zoom, of focus, of attention for our heart to receive the meaning, the wisdom by which God created this world and by which He orders human life, human existence. And at this point, it's important to go back and look a little bit more closely at heart, because one of the features of our heart is, if I can put it this way, it's got a zoom lens. Okay, all of our phones have zoom lens. I'd pull mine out and describe it to you, except that's how I'm recording this. So you can hold your device, your iPhone, and you can kind of zoom out, or you can zoom in to get closer or further out. And the heart works this way as well. And in the book of Proverbs, as well as other wisdom literature and scripture, there's a range of attention or awareness that is described, and we've got terms for different kind of degrees on this continuum. And the two that I want to focus on, you'll see brought together, for instance, in Proverbs 7:7, in Proverbs 9:4, and 9:16, I believe. What you see in both of these cases is that you have, or in all three of these cases, is that you have a figure called the simple or the naive. And simple, first of all, is where we all start out. Right? It's the default position in human life. And what the simple or naive person is the one who is completely absorbed at whatever moment he or she is at with the things that are in front of them, okay? And so you have this condition in which you say it's thoughtlessness. You've not thought about any of the alternatives. You've not taken into consideration outcomes or what could happen. There's just this kind of wide-eyed, absorbed engagement in whatever happens to be right there. And this is described as a lack of heart, okay, or a deficit of awareness. In other words, the zoom lens is so tight, the heart has constricted or shrunk to where all of our awareness is absorbed in this one thing, and we're not taking into account anything else. Now, that's one end of a continuum, but then the heart not only can shrink or constrict, but it also can expand or grow. And when we go through that process, what that's called in Proverbs is acquiring or purchasing or buying heart. In other words, it's expanding the horizon of what I'm aware of at any given moment. I'm bringing other things in. And so this is a different way of engaging with the world. Instead of being absorbed in this one object in front of me, what I'm doing when I acquire heart is I zoom out. And at that point, I have this more inclusive and differentiated form of awareness. In other words, I don't just see this one thing that's before me or that I want. I see that, but I also see possible outcomes, and I see other responsibilities and other things going on in the world. I kind of hold all of this broad set of things in my awareness, and at that point, then I can see and I can choose. And so that takes us to why all of this matters. Why all this matters. It matters for two reasons. It matters because getting the proper kind of wide-angled awareness enables comprehension and it enables choice. And both of these are so essential for life to go well. First of all, if we get the right angle of vision with our heart, with our awareness, enables us to comprehend wisdom, to see the wisdom by which God created the world all around us. And in this sense, wisdom in creation is kind of like an autostereogram. You've seen, this is an autostereogram. You've seen these. At first glance, it looks like just a bunch of random particulars. It's a jumble of dots or of objects that don't have any structure or meaning to it. It's just a bunch of stuff. But if you look at it in just the right way, if you achieve the proper amount of zoom, of focus, then all of a sudden this image pops out. And all of a sudden, instead of random dots, you're seeing an image of the thinker statue, or you're seeing a spaceship, or whatever it is, right? And so the image pops out when you achieve just the right degree of focus. That's how wisdom is in creation, okay? This deep order by which God made the world, if we focus in just the right way, then it pops out. And this tells us something about what the book of Proverbs is and how it's designed to work. You see, the book of Proverbs is designed to guide us to the point where we can see wisdom, and it does that by doing more showing than telling, if I can put it that way. In other words, it tells us only enough about wisdom in creation to help us attune our eyes, our focus, both of our physical eyes and of our heart, to where it can pop out. And so, like an autostereogram, the thing about that is if you stand next to somebody who has seen it, he or she can coach you, right? She can help you to know what you're looking for, but that person can never see it for you, can never see it for me. Every person has to see it for his or herself. That's how wisdom is in creation and in human life. We have to achieve that right focus, but to do that, we each have to do it. We have to look ourselves. I can't do it for you. You can't do it for me. What the book of Proverbs does is, by bringing these clusters of sayings together in such a way, what it does is it provides a kind of training ground for the type of awareness that we need to then see wisdom in the world about us, right? And so as I meditate on these clusters of sayings and I see themes kind of pop up and all of a sudden come together into patterns, that same awareness, that same kind of meditation that I'm exercising through meditating on Proverbs is also training the kind of awareness I need to see the patterns in the world around me for God's wisdom to surface as I view his creation. So achieving the proper zoom at the level of the heart is important first because it allows comprehension, in this case, comprehension of wisdom in creation. The second reason that it really matters is because it enables choice. Here's what I mean. Remember, the book of Proverbs is designed to guide us into the good life. And you'll remember, the good life is described as that state where we just habitually, naturally, we begin to do the right thing, to make good choices, and to live with integrity. In other words, to be the same person no matter what the situation, where we are, who's around, same person everywhere, right? That's the good life. Now, what is it that will enable us to actually live that, to choose and to follow that path? Answer: the appropriate expansion or acquisition, purchasing of heart. We have to have a broad enough range of awareness to choose at all. You can think about it this way. This kind of zooming in, zooming out feature of our awareness, you experience this every time you are gripped by desire. Okay? What you'll notice if you reflect upon your experience of desire is that desire is something that takes your awareness and it zooms in. It has this narrowing, constricting, isolating effect where when I'm thinking about that cookie that I'm not supposed to eat because I'm on a diet, but and it's looking so, and I can begin to smell. It has this way of absorbing all my awareness. And so desire is this absorptive, horizon constricting experience in terms of human consciousness or awareness or the heart. This is why it's the simple, the one that's just kind of absorbed by that one thing that's in front of them. That's the one who lacks heart, who has a deficit of this broader awareness that would enable choice. So what is it that you need in order to counteract desire, counteract temptation, and make possible a broad enough angle of awareness to actually make a choice that isn't just yielding to desire, but actually choosing, seeing something good and making a choice? Well, the answer is you purchase or you learn heart. You have to expand by zooming out in your awareness. In other words, you bring in more features of the world. You think of consequences, you think of outcomes, you think of other goals. You expand the horizon of your awareness, and that thing that you desire is in there, but now it's kind of overshadowed and it's put in a larger context by having this broadness of heart, of awareness. And it's when we do that we're now able to make a choice. And we can even choose now what we see to be good, but we don't even desire at the moment. Okay? It gives us a way of counteracting desire. And that is what enables us to make choices that lead into actually living the good life. Now, how do we do that? How do we broaden out our awareness? How do we press the zoom out in our heart? Well, as you read through wisdom literature, there's a few things that come to mind. First of all the way throughout Proverbs, you see that one thing that enables a person to learn heart or acquire heart, broaden our awareness, is to see, pay attention to the negative outcomes of those who turn away from wisdom. Okay? And so, for instance, as an example, Proverbs 21, verse 11, tells us that when the scoffer is punished, the simple acquire or learn heart. Okay? In other words, when the person who just hasn't thought about it anymore, and because of that, it tends to just be absorbed in the thing in front of them, when they see somebody else who's pursued something that was bad and they're punished, there's an outcome that they didn't want, it has this way of kind of expanding. We think about it now, and now there's more to think about. We have a broader horizon within which to start to make a choice. So paying attention to negative outcomes is one of the things by which we broaden our horizon and we acquire heart. The second thing that we see is that moral instruction itself gives us a way of drawing more information in and broadening out for as long as we pay attention to it. For only that long, right? As long as we pay attention to moral instruction or the Torah of the Lord, it broadens out our awareness. And so, for instance, it's Psalm 19, around, I think, verse 7. It says that the Torah of the Lord is perfect. In other words, the instruction of the Lord is perfect. It makes wise the simple. Okay, it takes the one that otherwise would be just all absorbed in the one thing in front of him, and it broadens it out, his awareness, until he can see the order of God in this world. So moral instruction, and particularly the instruction from the Lord, is what broadens our awareness. And then the third thing develops this, Psalm 119. Verse 130, I believe it is, says that the unfolding of God's words gives light. It provides a path of understanding. So meditating, reflecting on God's words so that the meaning emerges, right? They unfold. You don't just, as it were, see the words and the sentences, but you've paid enough attention, you've thought about it for the meaning to now emerge. You have that form of awareness. That gives light. In other words, it's gonna expand out what I can be aware of at this moment. And that provides the kind of insight or understanding that lays out a path leading to a good place in this world. So my prayer for you, my prayer for me in this is that now we have more information to zoom out, to broaden our sphere of awareness. We can use that. This is my prayer, that we would use that to purchase heart, to broaden out what we're aware of, and in that to choose to meditate, to look, to see the wisdom of God in this world, and to choose a path that leads to life. You remember that now is always the time to begin seeking wisdom. Today is always the day. Grace and peace to you.